I would say let's get it started. It's 9:30. So guys, welcome everybody once again. Round three, we got four great speakers at this evening for you guys, evening for me. We got first up Coach Brianna. She has to leave a little bit earlier, so she will start. We have Coach Francesco Nanni from Italy. We have Coach Mackay from Canada, and we have Coach Kyle Brown from the States in here as well. Um, I went quick through all those names. We're gonna go on a full presentation. Any questions, fire them away in the chat. If it's not clear enough in the chat, we will ask you to unmute yourself and ask your question to the coaches. Um, I know when we hit the Coach Mike McKay presentation, we will have a Q&A as well. So all you guys are feel free to think about questions you want to ask the coach. So first up, Coach Brianna, the floor or the screen in this case is all yours.
Well, thank you. First of all, thanks, Mike, for putting everything together and for letting me join. And I'm going to try to listen to as much as I can before I have to head down to practice. But I was trying to think of a topic, and that hasn't been as common throughout our 8 months of Zooms now. So what I kind of came up with was I wanted to talk a little bit about zone defense. I coached in Denmark and coached a pro team in Denmark, and I went there with 12 years of assistant experience and had always worked for coaches that played man-to-man. And my team there was not cut out to play man-to-man, I'll put it that way. My two Americans were big and not very athletic, and we couldn't guard teams man-to-man. So we ended up becoming a zone team and played probably 98% zone that entire season, and we're very successful defensively. And so I just kind of based my presentation on that. I was told when I was coming up with ideas that it might be, somebody told me like, that might be a little bit controversial. So we'll see what people think, but I just really wanted to kind of get a different perspective on defense and zone. And I think there's some misconceptions about it. And so I just want to share some ideas and actually just kind of get people thinking. And so that's where I'm going to take today's talk. So the first, I think, myth with zone defense is that it's just easy. Teams play zone because it's easy, it's lazy. This is for not only at the, high school, college level, but also at the youth level. But it's not. Zone defense is very challenging. You have to be able to teach different principles. Players need to have and learn really good spatial awareness. Depending on what kind of zone you play, whether it's a 2-3, a 1-2-2, if you're going to match up, out of your 1-2-2, maybe a 1-3-1. They're all different kind of spatial awareness, players cutting into that space, players cutting out of that space, how the zone shifts. So I think that's a really valuable skill to be able to teach players at any level. In the same way that you would teach man-to-man defensive principles, you have to be able to teach zone defensive angles in space. The other thing, I think with regards to that, kind of demystifying that and breaking that myth, is that there's constant communication. It's not easy for players to communicate over, 40 minutes and be very, very active and vocal with all five players, because if your back center person in your 2-3 zone doesn't communicate, you can't play it. If your wing doesn't communicate and bump, somebody to the next spot, you can't play it. And that's why we were really successful in Denmark, was because my backline players were incredible communicators, and just basically were my quarterbacks in the back line. And then the other thing that I think, again, this is kind of more at an advanced level, but when you're playing man-to-man, yes, you should probably know all of the opponent's strengths and weaknesses and matchups, in case you get switched on to a different player or, in rotations and whatnot. But do our players always know what the other, opponent, all five strengths and weaknesses are? Probably not. And so in a zone, though, you don't know who's going to be cutting into your area. And so you have to be aware who's a shooter, who's a driver, who's a back to the basket. Are they left shoulder? Are they right shoulder? Who can attack from the high post? And it's really important for players, to be able to have, again, building that knowledge and, just kind of putting them in a situation where they have to be able to know that. And that's not easy. So I think that, just a 2-3 is just placing, players in these stick positions and telling them to play defense is not really what a good zone defense would do. And so then the last thing is just conceptually players are going to be required to guard more space potentially than they would in a man-to-man. Depending, they have to guard a lot of space. If you have a good zone, you think about the Syracuse men's zone that, that's kind of been, that's what I based my team in Denmark on. I watched every YouTube video of Syracuse men's basketball when I was trying to teach them how to, trying to learn myself. Because as I said, I had only really worked for coaches who were man to man, and we weren't going to be that team. And so I had to really hone in on my zone defense and breakdown skills. And I watched a lot of Syracuse because they were successful in it and they covered a lot of space. And defensively, that's our goal, is to cover as much space and make as little of space as possible for the offense. We want to gain space defensively and take away space for the offense. So then that kind of leads into my second one. And I know this is and there are a lot of youth coaches, I'm sure, on this call, that youth players should not be allowed to play zone defense. I know there's a lot of leagues in the US who ban it and say, no, you can't play, in under 10 or whatever, there is no zone. Everybody has to play man to man. And I just, I want us to think about, I'm not going to say we should do it one way or the other, but, realistically, like, man to man is just as, they'll say they're doing it because it's too easy. Again, you're just putting players in a spot. They don't learn any defensive principles. But really, you could say at the U8 level in man to man, you tell players, you line up, you're guarding that person across from you. And then they just kind of run around and follow them. And is that really any better than putting them in a zone? Are we really teaching anything more in that situation? And I don't think we are. I think if you're going to teach some man-to-man principles, great. But you can also do the same thing with zone. If you're going to put them in a zone, you can teach some zone principles as well, going back to the spatial awareness, communication, having high hands, basic defensive principles that will, it'll work for both. You want to have high hands and communicate in man too. But again, at the youth level, we're teaching those. And I don't think it's fair to say that you can't also teach some of those principles in zone. And that's kind of my overall point with that. Again, going back to the spatial awareness, and at the youth level, I think that's one thing. And even to be honest, at the college level, players lack is awareness, offensively and defensively. So the more that we can put them in a training environment that teaches some kind of awareness, are we aware of cutters? Are we aware of how things shift when the ball moves? When the ball moves, we're still jumping the ball in a zone. It just might be to a space rather than to a gap or to a person. So again, just kind of reemphasizing those principles. And then at the end of the day, like, zone is part of the game. And so to really, again, I think at the youth level, like, yes, we want to simplify the game. We don't want to do, necessarily complex things, but if it's something that we're allowed to do in the game and they're going to be able to do, teams are going to be able to do against us, we're going to be able to do at higher levels, like, we should introduce them to that being a possibility. It's just like, we can dribble and shoot and pass, and you can play man and you can play zone and you can screen and do different things. So why shouldn't we expose them to that at, a level that we think is appropriate as coaches? And that might be at the, again, U10, U11, whatever level you think is appropriate. And then I just kind of also will briefly talk about the other myth, that you can't play zone against a good shooting team. And I've heard this a lot, especially at the college level. And I think it goes back to what you emphasize. In Denmark, we were top 3 in the league in field goal defensive percentage. We were top 3 in the league in 3-point field goal defensive percentage. And we were top 3 in rebounding, defensive rebounding. And it was because we scouted and we prepared and we emphasized when we needed to take away shooters. When we were playing a really good shooting team, we made sure that we emphasized how far we had to extend on the 3-point line. We shifted our zone a little bit. So we played a 2-3, kind of like a 1-1-3. I had a really long athletic guard, young Danish guard that's actually now playing at Butler here in the States, but she picked up the ball full court and put pressure and funneled it to a side, tried to shrink the floor. Again, we're trying to take away space. My back guard, was great at anticipating and moving on the next pass. And so we just kind of, again, we shifted our zone to try and take away what the strengths of the other team were. And if that was shooting, then we would shift it to extend out more. And maybe we'd bring our backside, forward out. So it kind of looked more like a 3-2 or even a four on the perimeter and 1 protecting the rim. Like we changed it just like you would a man-to-man and how you guard. And so that's, I think, again, it kind of goes back, like, yes, you can play it against a good shooting team. You just have to, it's what we emphasize, it's what, as coaches, we emphasize and we want to take away. And we make sure that that's relayed to the players and the players are aware of, what the strengths of the offense are. I think the other really, thing that it does against good shooting teams is it minimizes the number of offensive actions that we need to defend. Most teams are not going to run a lot of different offensive actions, or are they going to have a specific offensive action against a zone to get, their best shooter a shot? Maybe will they have 1 or 2? Maybe, probably. But are they going to run, 4 or 5 different quick hitters to get them a shot? Probably not. At least, in my experience. And so that was kind of, again, it's an advantage for us in the defense is we probably have to guard one set, 1 quick hit against the zone to get a shooter a shot. And so for us now, we've eliminated 4 other actions that we may have had to guard in a man-to-man for their best shooter or their 2 or 3 best shooters. That now we don't have to. Do we have to be a little bit more aware of where shooters are? Yes. But again, that's what we train. That's what we talk about. That's what we emphasize. And like I said, the goal is to always take away space.
So coach, we got a question coming in the chat.
Yeah.
From
Go for it.
Lauren. What did you emphasize to be so successful rebounding in a zone?
Yeah, that is challenging. The thing we did, we broke it down a lot. Again, because actually my 2 post players were not real mobile. So like in a Syracuse zone, which I watched a lot of, like they're super athletic and they could pursue the ball. My 2 players, like they didn't rebound outside of their area exceptionally well. And so what we did was we did a lot of breakdown. We would put them, we do 3-on-3 strong side in where our zone would be. And we do rebounding, again, rebounding out of that with the awareness that you got to match to a man on a shot. So just like in everything, we don't want 2 people on the ball. We don't want 2 people on 1 offensive player. Same principles for rebounding. So we would really try to emphasize that, like when the shot goes up, it's got to be 1-to-1. I don't know. I'm sure a lot of people on here are familiar with tagging up, and we run tagging up here at Davison. And I'm actually kind of the one that's one of my kind of roles here going forward. And I think that principle kind of aligns with zone defense. And from a defensive perspective is, when the shot goes up, we got to get to 1-to-1. And that just requires a lot of communication and a lot of repping it. And I think small-sided situations in your zone formation, whatever that zone formation might be. So I hope that kind of answers the question.
No, that's perfect. And if Bjorn has any more questions, he's sure to ask them in the chat.
For sure. And then just kind of to sum it up, because I know trying to keep these a little bit short. I could talk for a long time, but I know there's some great speakers behind me. So just again, with the advantages of zone, you know, it can minimize your scout and preparation time. You know, we didn't, not a lot of teams have a lot of zone offenses, you know, or complexities. You'll see a lot of the same zone offenses. And, you know, maybe, like I said, maybe one or two quick hits against it. You know, will that some teams screen against a zone? Yes. Are you going to see as much of screening? Probably not. You know, they'll set ball screens. They'll try to pin, pin in the backside or the weak side and, you know, skip passes and things like that. But really, it's a much smaller scale. So for us in Denmark, like it minimized our scout preparation for other teams and allowed us to spend a little bit more time focusing on how we were going to attack them. And if you've heard any of my other speeches, I like offense. So
So,
I've any chance I can spend more time on offense, that's a good thing.
so
Go ahead.
if I might ask a question, Coach, what would you do on the opposite? So, for example, you have a night and you lose a game while playing zone. Would you analyze their offense to see what's wrong with, or what, not really what's went wrong, but what was the mistakes you made on defense and train on it? Or how would you improve the zone?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, and that happened. The best team in the league, who we actually lost in the semifinals to, and who went on to win it all. We beat them once and we lost to them. Well, we lost in the best of 5, but they picked it apart one game and I was so frustrated. We came out of it. We went man, we couldn't guard them in man. We went back to it. And I'm like, we got to do what we got to do. We have to, you know, we've been zone all year. We got to stick to it. But, you know, what they actually did to us is they ran their man offense. They ran like a triangle offense against us, which created an overload. But they ran their same man-to-man principles. And we just struggled to guard it because they almost in a way turned it into us having to match man-to-man, which was not to our strength. And so, you know, I spent time trying to figure out, how do we take away that overload? How do we take away their advantages and tweak it? You know, so again, that probably what it did was it changed our formation a little bit, but still kept us in a zone more than it had in that game where we kind of got torched. If that makes sense. But definitely we make adjustments out of it. Like I said, it's a matter of taking, you know, the basic structure of a zone, whether, you know, whatever you're in. So for us, that game, it was going from a 2-3 to more of a 3-2 lineup, shifting, you know, our top person over a little bit more, flattening it a little bit in some ways, not having our ball handler pick up as early, but really kind of matching more. And trying to be advantageous that way. Does that make sense? Kind of.
No, that makes perfect sense. I got another question coming up as well, but I think we can add that on later on because I might think it will come later on, but if not, I'm gonna fire it at you anyway.
Okay. I only have 1 or 2 more slides, so then I'll go for some questions.
Yeah.
So again, so some of the advantages, I think it can force aggressive teams to be more passive. And this is kind of from experience here in the US. You know, there's a lot of teams that are, you know, very aggressive against man. Maybe they're a dribble drive team. They're, you know, trying to attack the basket, putting pressure on the rim, things like that offensively. And when you go zone against them, teams, you know, a coach will be, you know, very adamant about then running your zone offense, which is can not always, depends on the coach, can typically be more passive. You know, let's get the ball, let's pass the ball around the perimeter. And if you're a team that's aggressive attacking dribble drive and now you're, you know, being more passive, running, you know, maybe passing and cutting and stuff like that, like that's to our advantage defensively because we've taken you out of what you do offensively. And I do see a trend of that in, you know, again, in my experience, especially at the college level on the women's side, like that being the case. Now, I will tell you, like a good team would just keep running their dribble drive motion. If that was my team and that's what we did, I would keep running my dribble drive motion. But I don't think that happens as often as my philosophy would share. or do. So again, that's to my defensive advantage. Again, I talked about this. It'll kind of neutralize what teams do offensively and the number of set plays and specific actions that they may run. So that helps with, scouting and preparing and taking their key players out of positions where they may, have an ISO situation. If they are a team that runs a lot of ISOs and now we're zone, now we've kind of eliminated some of those opportunities. The other thing that we, and this was how we ran our zone defense, again, because we want to try to take away space defensively, is we really tried to emphasize limiting ball reversals. We really tried to, once the ball was established on one side, we tried to keep it there and not let teams swing the ball from side to side. And put a lot of ball pressure with our long, lanky guard that was on top. She was about 6 foot. That's not bad to have either. And then I think zones can change tempo. It can, definitely slow teams down, make them a little bit more passive. And if that's to your advantage defensively, against a team that's trying to play at a quick pace, then, that's something that, again, you want to be able to do. And I think, like I said, I just wanted people to think about some of these things. And, I've had a lot of success with it. And, in Denmark and other places with teaching zone and kind of emphasizing that, because I believe in it. If you don't believe in it, that's to your own, coaching philosophy, that's fine. I'm not trying to be critical or anything, but I just don't think we should automatically rule it out and say that it's a lazy way or it's an easy way, because I think there are a lot of advantages to doing it and you can have a lot of success. The Toronto Raptors ran a ton of zone and were one of the best defensive teams in the country. Or in the NBA, and so I'm fascinated by them and how they run their zone. I'm still trying to figure out kind of the nuances and whatnot, but I just think there's a lot to be said, and I wanted to bring that to the table because I hadn't heard it on a lot of Zooms, to be honest.
No, you're absolutely right. So we got at least 2 questions now in the chat, because it is a some way controversial topic, especially when talking about youth. So we got a question from Coach Paul coming in. How did you defend / rotate versus ball screens?
So that was kind of, it depended on the team. Again, that's kind of where the scouting. So we would basically try to ice them depending on where they were. So most teams will try to set, if we were in a 2-3 or a 1-1-3, teams would try to set it, on the outside of the top defenders. And so for us, we would just try to treat it like an ice. And we would try to really, again, we're trying to keep the ball on one side of the floor anyway and minimize ball reversals. So we would try to ice it and get up and force them into basically where we had our back middle post already in what we would consider deep drop coverage. And then our wing, depending on if they put, a shooter on that side, she was kind of in that gap anyway, and almost treat it like a man-to-man ice coverage.
No, that's great. So next one was up. Do you also use full court or 3/4 court trap zone in order to steal space? Or are these concepts extended to that kind of zone defense anyway, from Coach Christian?
I think you can, definitely. I haven't used, in Denmark, we didn't, because again, to extend my zone defense wasn't advantageous because of personnel. Like I said, the reason we played it was because my backline post players were not real athletic. And so trapping and making them have to rotate was probably not to our advantage. But my Danish guard was really athletic. So that's why she immediately picked up the ball once the rebound happened or a shot was made. She was picking up in transition and just trying to slow down the ball handler. And she was 17 years old and had endless energy. So that was good. And so that kind of helped with our transition defense. I think you could extend it maybe if you wanted to put both your guards up a little bit or bring your top 2 guards up. We sometimes did that, but if you had a more athletic team, I definitely think you could extend it and trap and work on your rotations, just like if you were, trapping a ball screen and you're working on your rotations. It's the same principles. And I haven't had a team that really has done that. We might do a little bit of that, going forward, but I definitely think that's something you could do.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add something on the ball screen because I just remind myself of that defense. I don't know other people watching the Euro League. I think it was Zalgiris. They also played a 2-3, but on
Oh,
ball
really?
screens on ball screens they jump switched. The top two jump switched
Okay.
every ball
Yep.
screen.
I'm gonna have to go back and watch.
I don't know if anybody else like Francesco. Do you know about that, or maybe Kyle as you're
Francesco, you're on
Uh,
the spot.
yeah, no, I haven't actually seen that Zalgiris defense, but now I'm interested to that. I think that ball screen is a problem every time on defense in a zone defense. But as Brianna said, like every explanation was great about how you can try to defend it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be interesting. I mean, I think if you jump switched it, and we actually did do that sometimes. And then we would just bring like we would bring our forward up high, because for a second you're kind of gonna have to shift the guard coming off the ball kind of quickly. So it would just kind of distort the zone a little bit, but we just bring our forward on the weak side up, and that was usually a guardish kind of player anyway. So, but I'm curious now, so I'll have to go back and watch some clips on how they defended it and stuff. But I like I said, the ice worked really well for us. It stumped a lot of teams. A lot of teams had trouble. We actually did that here in the US too, not here at Davidson, but at my last school, and really trying to ice those ball screens in our zone, and teams struggled because we funneled them basically right into the gap where we had 3 defenders.
Yeah, no, I will take a look at what team it was, or anything like that, and I will share with you what team it was and what to watch, or I will share it with a tweet on this topic as well. So I want to thank you and for this great presentation about zone defense. I see it indeed it triggers people to asking questions about different visions as well. I think if you're done with sharing, Coach Francesco can share his screen.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm up for it. So let's go. What it is? Okay. So no, wait. I will present all my desktops so it's easier to go. Okay. Are you all able to see that, right?
Yes. We're able to see it. I don't know if you have any clips on it, because otherwise you might have to optimize the video sharing for it, because I haven't done that yet.
Okay, I will do it later. I will only have a few clips. So very briefly, so this clinic about tonight, I want to be super short. I will love to have time for all your questions, but the time is going to be short because we have a lot of great speakers here tonight. So please feel free to ask me anything in all the social media platform. I see a lot of familiar faces here. So this is what we have been trying to do in this first few months with our under 18 team. And here on the call tonight, there is also my assistant, a great coach, Nicholas. You will find him on the call as well. And we are trying to introduce aspect of a conceptual offense through player development for a team that has never seen a conceptual offense. They were used to play in a set-based offense and without a big emphasis on read, reaction, and this kind of stuff. So adding to this problem, just to explain the situation, we didn't have the same players practicing with us all the time. I was the coach of the under 18 team, but sometimes we have player up from the under 16 teams. Sometimes we have a player that is under 18, but he was practicing also with the pro team for all the days. So it was coming with us only once or twice per week. The situation was not optimal, but we try as a staff to take all of this situation and to use it as a challenge to be creative in our coaching. So first of all, super generic, the aim of the offense is to create a good shot. And obviously what a good shot is it depends on your belief. It can be a good shot for me is different from a good shot for Mike D'Antoni, for example. How do we do it? So this is a little bit of terminology for the Italian, from the Italian model. We create an advantage, we maintain or expand the advantage, and then we convert the advantage, we finalize the advantage. So how do we do it? An advantage is created through a numerical situation. So every time I drive, now there is a 2-on-1 situation, 4-on-3, 5-on-4, everything. And it can be also a mismatch situation. So a mismatch, for example, there is no clear advantage, but there is a big against a small guard or a small against a slower defender. So how do we maintain the advantage after the first step has been taken? We want to maintain the advantage by simply moving the ball, having first touches decision, and spacing reaction, and blah, blah, blah. We'll speak about this more later, just to give you a view of the idea. And obviously we have to convert a shot, to score, to draw fouls, to end on a good shot. So this is a terminology from Ettore Messina. You all know him, great Italian coach. And so this, the idea of punishing who helps, is going to be clear for us. It's very huge for us. So, and here in between these two spots, there is what we're going to focus on this lesson. So I have to recognize, my player have to recognize, is it neutral or we have an advantage? From there, you start playing in complete different ways. Obviously, it's not black and white, but we want them to understand the difference between all the variations of advantage or not advantage. So this is the principle of our offense. We have different tools. And so which tools do we use in different situations? For example, a tool can be a dynamic drive for a one-on-one situation. A tool can also be, I pass the ball to one of my teammates and I go and screen for him. So this is an action. So when do I do a dynamic drive for a one-on-one, or when do I do a tool, an action, a get, a dribble and off, a ball screen? So obviously, this is what we will focus on. But first of all, I would love to have a super quick discussion. So we always speak about conceptual offense compared to a set-based offense. So what is for you, Mike, just super quick, the difference between a set-based offense and a conceptual offense?
So to me, the first thing that I would say is that we aren't really calling out plays and we aren't holding the ball back to set every player on his spot. If we are talking about sets, and especially when we talk about setting youth stuff, we cross half court, we call out horns. Now we set everybody in the horn setup. And after that, we're going to play 1 or 2, 3 options, and we either have a score or we have something else. To me, that's what I think is a set instead of conceptual offense. Is we play 1, maybe 2 or 3 man games. And that could either be pistols, for example, in which we have multiple reads. What does the defense, what's the advantage? Do they switch? How do we counter against the switch? Do they hard hedge? Do they trap? Or do they play a drop?
Yeah.
And then it's all about, for me, all about what tools did you give as a coach to your youth players or players in general to help out in this? Or what did they come up with organically?
Yeah, so I completely agree with you, but I want to add something else. So even when we are speaking about a set-based offense, we do a lot of read. But for me, and actually this terminology, it came out from me and Alex, our common friend, we were saying that in a conceptual offense, we simply don't have a predetermined order of the trigger. You can go on offense, you can have a pistol situation, you can improvise a dribble and off with a corner or a pin away, for example. In a set-based offense, even if you are playing into a script, you have, let's say, a floppy situation, a diamond situation, and then you have, for example, a side pick and roll. But the good team, even if they're playing a set-based offense, they will react to the first trigger. So the first trigger is off screen. If the defense shoot the gap on the first off screen, now I will do something else. I will fade to the corner. I will skip the pass. And if I have a shoot, I will take it, or I will drive the gap, for example. So what we try to achieve with our player is to teach them the concept that they can use either in a full conceptual offense, but also since in Europe, 99% of the teams still play a set-based offense, we want them to be able to go next year when they finish their youth sector to go there and play for everybody, because our job is not just to create a player for the world that we would love, but to create a player that is able to play for multiple coaches. Okay, so I need to go way quicker. I will skip a little bit this metaphor part. So picking the tools, I need some decision. I need some basketball IQ to pick the right tools to attack the defense. So what do I need? The first thing that I need to understand is if there is an advantage, as we said before, or I'm neutral. And an advantage is not only that my man is off balance, that I can beat my own man one-on-one. There is different type of advantage. So let's say this example, I received the ball on top of the key, and now my defender is in front of me, is in a good position, is in balance, I don't have an advantage. But my teammate is sealing inside the paint. So I have to pass the ball to him because there is the advantage. So my example was super easy, but it's not every time. Imagine a little bit harder situation. So I receive the ball on top of the key, my defender is in balance, there is nobody in the paint, but I can recognize that my teammate on the wing is guarded by a smaller defender. So what do I do? If I pass the ball to him immediately, he doesn't have an advantage in that part of the court. If I make him cut immediately, probably maybe, let's say, very complicated scenarios, there is a big man inside, so maybe I need to dribble the ball. He's gonna cut while the big man is gonna lift behind in order to be able to punish the defense, to make it impossible for them to switch on three. So it is a very high complicated scenario, just for you to understand that we need to understand if there is an advantage and where it is before I go on, because if there is no advantage, if I'm neutral, I will do something that we will discover later. So the second question is a little bit more complicated. So who am I as a player? Who is my teammate? And who is guarding me / my teammate? So these three questions are in this order because the first one is the easiest. Every player should know their ability, their maybe deficits, the things that they're not so good at. So it starts with, okay, with this amount of space, am I a good shooter? This is a good shot for me or not? Every player should be able to answer this question. They should know what their range, if it's a good shot with a defender, 1 meter for them, 2 meter for them, from them, okay. But also when the level rise up, they need to understand who is their teammate. So let's say that I need to play a two-man action and I receive the ball in the wing and my teammate at the top of the key is a big man. I will not play a pass and go to screen for him. It will not be maybe, like, imagine that he's a typical big man. It's not gonna be ideal. I will probably pass the ball to him and go for a get, so like an end-off situation. Or if it's the opposite, I'm a big man and there is a guard on my side, I can go for a dribble end-off, I can pass and go to screen for him. Again, who is guarding me? Maybe I'm not a great shooter, or maybe I'm not a great athlete, but the defender in front of me is slower than me, is smaller than me, so I can pass the ball and post him up, for example. Or maybe, as we said before, my teammate is guarded by somebody that is switch on him. So he has an advantage, either of quickness or of size. So as you understand, this is very easy on paper, but when you practice this and you need to make this decision on the fly in 0.5 seconds, it's not so easy, it's very hard. So it's something that needs to be practiced, and it's also help us as coaches to create a relationship with the players. And later, I know that Mike Mackay is one of my viewers, absolute genius in terms of like creating a good relationship with the players, a good connection in order to ensure the better transfer of knowledge. So we want the player to be comfortable in their role. Obviously, every youth player should want to increase the amount of skills that they have. Maybe they're not a great shooter today, they can become a great shooter tomorrow or in a month or in a year, but they need to understand what are they able to do at the moment and what is their teammate able to do. Now I will go on because it's already 10 minutes that I'm speaking. And obviously, in order to pick the right tool, I need to have the control of the situation. So shot and game clock, score, momentum of the game. Obviously, if you notice, this stuff is the hardest. For every point, like this is the harder level. For our under 18 team, for example, I'm sure that maybe we get to this point, maybe we get to this point. We for sure are not here. We are not here. And we are here maybe, but for sure we are not here because also we didn't play games because of this coronavirus situation. So for us as coaches, it's important to understand that it's a ladder. You know, you take the first step, and then the second step is not something that we can achieve all of this in one practice or in 1 month. It's impossible. So I'll go very quick on this. So decision, if I have an advantage already, I can play a dynamic one-on-one. I can make an extra pass from corner to corner man, for example. I can pass the ball inside, or I can shoot it. If I don't have an advantage, I want to create it. So I can create it through a static one-on-one, two-man action, three-man action, or if my team, as we said before, as a set play, let's say I came off a pin down, and obviously the pin down is the first trigger of the set. If I have a big enough advantage, I can shoot it or drive, like attacking the curve. But if I don't, defense play good defense on me. Now I go on to the second option. Okay, so just speaking personally with our team, we try to take away completely this option, the static one-on-one, in order to build the offense quicker, to create an environment where they want to overshare the ball almost. Obviously, the static one-on-one is not that. There are some situations where you need to create an advantage of the dribble. So this is just a constraint that we put to our players to make the situation more extreme in a lot of drills, but it's not something that is written in the Bible. Okay, so I'll get to the core of it. There are any questions before I get to the example of a progression?
Not at this moment. I think everything is very clear.
Okay, or maybe I'm making so much chaos that people just jump out of the conversation. Okay, so example of a progression. So this is just one example, but the concept and the steps that I'm gonna explain here are something that you can elaborate to any one-on-one situations that you have. It's just an example. So the first step is, okay, 1-on-0 / guided defense. I don't like to work on air a lot, but guided defense to offer different solutions and especially to promote creativity. So we try usually not to say, okay, now if the defender is here, you have to do that. You have to do that. Is okay, now if your defender is here, you have these options. You know, you can try this. It's a new movement. We want to expand their bag of tricks. We want to expand what they are comfortable doing it. So first diagram is very simple. Pass the ball, the defender is coming, and here we can select some options. For example, the defender is far away, I can shoot it. He shade toward the baseline, he shade toward the middle, or we can have, since these players are already a little bit grow in their development, we can say, okay, now the defense leave just a small advantage and they can fake, you know, play in the uncertain spaces. Okay, but it's not live yet. So this is the first drill. And the second drill is 1-1 same guided defense. What I want to do before adding the live defense step is to add a second layer of read. I think this step is not common for coaches. I think it's very important because often we forget, we don't forget, the players forget that they're 1-on-1, even if it's dynamic, it's into a whole world of other options. So when they receive the ball, obviously, let's say that a decent player is able to read his defender, but we want great players, and great players are able to read multiple things at the same time. So an example of it is I will put a coach in the paint, and when the ball is flying, while the ball is flying, the coach can ask for the pass. So one has to receive and pass the ball and read his own defender. Or the coach is not going to stand here. The coach will like roam around. Sometimes the coach can ask the ball here because the player has to see him, or there could be like a teammate here. Like you can create as many drills as you want. I'm not like giving you drills, but the idea is that before going live, I like to have them think about something else, because to read my own defender is not enough. I have to read my own defender while I do something else. Then now is live. In this situation is live in a closeout. So it's not a static one-on-one. And what we don't do this year, we almost never did, is to play one-on-one. Okay, now it's a closeout. And if you don't have, okay, sorry. And now if you don't have enough advantage, you will simply take a bad shot, because this is what happened. When we play one-on-one live, I pass the ball, maybe the player misread the closeout, or the closeout was good enough and he doesn't have a clear shot or a clear drive, and now we'll take a bad shot. This is something that we don't want. What we're going to do here in this moment, in this step to install our offenses to make them able to play this concept, is to add one option. Usually one option, we will see a clip of this later, is to add another player. So what happened here is pass here, the same read with the coach here, the same read one-on-one, now it's live. If I don't have a clear advantage, what I'm going to do is pass the ball back to Chu, that is going to be more or less here on the 3-point line, and go for a get action. So this is something that we are over communicating to our player all the time. We don't want to hold the ball. If you don't have a dynamic advantage, you try to create one by playing with your teammate. Okay, so now what will happen is pass, it will run with you, X1 will play this defense. Obviously it's a 2-on-1 situation, so we know that the offense have a great advantage. Our constraint in this situation are that if the defense goes under, you can shoot it. You can also drive it if the defense goes under, not in a good way. If the defense goes, obviously, if they go under, there is also the risk screen situation. If the defense goes over, you have to imagine that there is another defender here. So if they go over, you can dribble, you can keep them on the back, you can snake. You cannot attack the rim. You can only take a pull-up jumper. So it's an advantage, obviously. It's good players are able to generate good shot out of it, but it's not like they drive the rim every time. I would not like that.
So Francesco,
Now,
coming back to
yeah.
that, coming back to the other sheet with the diagram on it, we got Coach Jack Fleming on here. Oh, that's an early morning for you, Coach. Do you prefer to have coaches or players as guided defenders in player development?
So in this type of drills, I like to use players. I also like to use players because to give the right read is something that makes them smarter. You know, if during the game now I tell you, okay, Jack, don't let him drive to his left hand, and you've done hours and hours during the month of playing guided defense, and you should know in theory exactly how to send someone to his right hand, for example. But also, I think it's a form of cooperation between them. And I like coaches to be in when we need to manage something. So for example, you will see later a situation where I want a coach to be present. But I have to say, like during warm-up situations, sometimes I like to play guided defense when we play with our pro player, for example. First of all, pro players are not going to do guided defense for themselves. Second, I like to be them, to be hands on them, to be physical on them. Like it's a way to create a relationship for me with them. So I think it's different depending on the context. I hope I answer Jack's question well enough. Can I go on, Mike? Jack, is everything
sure,
okay?
Yeah, go on.
Okay,
Yep.
perfect. So we explained this diagram also. Now we go on. So now it's we're going to a 2-on-2 or 3v3 small sided games. And now we want to insert the one-on-one situation into the context of what we want to play. So this is a basic example. Now we have skipped one pass. The ball is not here. The ball is here. There is always the coach because the ball is passed to one and one now has to read. Think about like something that we would do in only a practice, but to masterize all of this is not easy because now one has to read the position of his own defender. He has to check the paint if there is an advantage in the paint. And now he also has to read the position of X2 defender and X2 is teammate, because, for example, sometimes maybe it's not a pass and go for a get. Maybe he has an opportunity to cut in front or to play a backdoor. So now this is all stuff. It's read over read over read. Okay, so I will go on because my time is almost up. Very briefly, so as we said before, when I have like a situation, imagine like an X out rotation, the defense is rotating right, so I don't have any immediate shot. Now we're going to an action. So it can be a dribble, end off, a ball screen, or a get. This is the first step that we create. These are the three options that we work a lot during this first month. So again, who am I? Who is my teammate? And this for me is crucial. So the players should, you know, Peter Lonergan, who is like I really respect all of his work. He said that skills equals fun, and it's completely true. I love it. Something else that I would like to add is that also knowledge equals fun. If you, especially when you're 18, you're not 13 anymore. So maybe you know your limitation. You know that, oh, that player is more athletic than me. That player is more skilled than me. But when you start to be smarter, when your basketball IQ grows, and you start understanding how you can beat them, maybe by being smart at playing dribble and off, for example, or screening, then it becomes more fun as well. I have a player in my under 18 team who is the best, one of the best screener that I've known, much better at playing dribble and off and sealing and playing the angles than a lot of our professional players. He's incredible at it, and he takes much pride and confidence in it. Obviously, every action has different coverages and we will punish it. I want to go very quick ahead because there are some stuff that I would like to speak with you about before we're finished. So in a lot of situations, I think that the decision between advantage and no advantage is the most important for our offense. Everything that we play, also when you play pick and roll situation, let's say that the ball goes out of the first action, now you have the ball on the spot up situation, you have to recognize if there is an advantage or if you need to do something to create one. So I don't really like to use, especially for like 4-on-4 and 5-on-5 situation, a situation where the advantage is already created. I like situation where the advantage can be there or where the advantage maybe is not there on the first pass and now you have to create it, because it's a decision that we have to practice as much time as possible. So wait, okay, this is very important, but I will after the video. So I will share a quick video for you. Mike, the video is gonna be terrible. We all know it, but I hope it's gonna be just fine. Are you able to see this, right? Yes, Mike, are you able to see it? Yes. Okay, perfect. So I will stop it a lot so you can see it. So this is a drill. It's not a great drill. It's something, it's a fake drive. When the pass starts, he has to relocate to the corner and the defender has to make a longer step. So there is an artificial advantage. And now we can decide when he takes the ball here, he will be able to decide, okay, I shoot or I drive, or if nothing is here, he's going to be able to play an action, a get action with this man. Is it clear? Okay, now he's shooting, he's making a crazy shot. Again, shot. Okay, same drill, different angle. Now, pass. Now, what he does here, he take the ball, I stop so everybody can see. He passed the ball to his teammate and go for a get. Were you able to see that without too much lagging?
Yeah, I know. For me, it was good.
Okay, so he made a bad mistake. We correct him, even if he scored. Here, he didn't look for his one-on-one. He was not aggressive at the basket, and his defender was able, even if in the end he didn't defend in a good way, he was able to stay here. While if you take the ball, if you face the basket, if you maybe fake to shoot or simply set up your feet in order to score, your defender from here, he has to come here. And now if you want to pass the ball, you are more effective. It's about space and be respected by the defender. Now, this is a good example. Very quick, okay. Again, now is a 2-on-2. So we add the defender here. About constraint, for now, this was one of the first drills that we do. This defender was not able to steal the ball on the pass. Now, again, he read the situation, advantage here, he completed it with a shot. He didn't need to play with his teammate. Now here, same situation, pass, go. He doesn't have a shot, the defender is close. He passed the ball, and great example. Okay, he stumbled the ball, but it was great. You know, I passed, I tried to create an advantage with my teammate. The defense was about to switch, and he keeps it and tried to beat the switch in his way. For me, this is a great example. Another example, pass, same stuff, it was the same day of practice. Pass, and now he knows who he is, and you know, this guy is a great guard, a good shooter. You don't want to pass the ball and go play again. He's gonna go a dribble and off. The defense, he stays here in the pocket and is able to receive a good pass. So this is an example of how we can build things. Another example. Are you able to see this well enough? So here, again, he received the ball. This for me is another mistake. He didn't look at the basket. He was not checking for himself to score. If he had an opportunity to score or to drive on the baseline here, he went immediately to an action. So these are mistakes, but in our minds, at this step of the construction of a team, these are mistakes that can happen. So we are kind of happy if our players are oversharing the ball instead of undersharing it and going too much for their one-on-one. Obviously, in a perfect world, there wouldn't be mistakes, but there are, and we like the mistake to be oversharing the ball. I'll go very quick in the end. So in the Italian federation system, there is this balance between autonomy and cooperation, and the right balance of it is very hard to find, and it's important to find for every team in every aspect. Okay. The last one, I didn't speak about a lot of stuff that I want to speak. The idea of recycling is not just to save the planet, it's also to save our offense in this situation. So we use this terminology with our players sometimes. So everything can be recycled. A cut, for example, let's say that I'm cutting at the basket and I see that my cut is going anywhere. I'm not receiving the ball. So I can recycle my cut into a screen for one of my teammates, for example. Or a teammate is coming for a handoff with me and I don't want to pass the ball to him because I see that he doesn't have a great advantage to his own defender. I can keep the ball and go play with somebody else. Okay. And again, this is why we do it. Because if players are incentivized to read more than their own one-on-one, they can become a smarter player and they become a player that will be more helpful for their team. Something that we see happen after the first weeks of practice was that even in situations that we didn't practice in details, for example, like X out rotation on the weak side, somebody was starting to like pin in their own man to create an open shot for their teammate, because the players were understanding that there are different ways to be helpful for your teammates. This is all. This is a clip about recycling. Here, there is no advantage. Oh, sorry. Sorry, okay. I won't stop it anymore. There is no advantage. Recycle into a dribble and off to the corner. This is perfect. Okay. Super quickly, this is the last stuff that I want to speak about. Tools that we should use to build it is we should speak after practice, debrief with our players. So what we see today, because it's really like is a scientific fact, and in this call there are people that knows a lot more than me about this, that the debriefing helps the I don't have the terms in English, but it helps the learning. And it's also, we want to over communicate our priorities. I'm going to share this with you that I share with in a lot of our clinic, is these short stuff. So a while back, the company asked the manager to okay, I'm going to read. Ask the executive of 600 companies to estimate the percentages of their workforce who could name the company's top 3 priorities. The manager said that would be 64%. And in reality, it was 2%. So for us as coaches, is the same. If we ask our players, what is the 3 priorities for our team? They should have it clear, but they want. If I ask you, your priority would say pressure on defense, running fast break, and share the ball. And the players, I'm not sure that if they will know it. My players probably won't know it, because sometimes myself, I am too chaotic. I speak too much, as I'm doing right now, and I lose focus of our priorities. But we need to over communicate our priorities. Also, self-evaluation right after the act, and prepare on offense for the same group. Okay. So I will answer a question, and this is all the stuff that we didn't speak about today, but 30 minutes is such a short time. Now I'm here if somebody has some question, or if you don't, you can find me on Twitter, on mail.
Yes. So, we got some questions for you. If I'm correct, it's from a fellow Italian coach, Christian Narcio. If I'm pronouncing it correctly, coach. If I don't, please correct me. He asked, how do you deal with corrections on this type of prescribed situations? So we talk about you're giving the reads and options to them, and it's unprescribed. So they free flow with it. As the situation is always different, do you always stop each scenario, or you make it on the flow, you let the flow go and you do it on the fly?
So I'm trying this year, and I'm being successful, at least in this regard, to stop as less as possible. I'm using a lot of correction on the fly, but sometimes if I see that there is a mistake that's been made again and again, for example, we are not, let's say it's a 2-on-2 situation, and we are excited about playing catch with our teammate because it's something new, and we are not attacking our one-on-one. It's a situation where I will stop and say, okay, guys, we are not paying attention to this. We are not paying attention to the right balance between play for yourself. If you start being passive, if you start simply paying to pass, you will not be able to play and to be aggressive during the games.
All right, we got one more. So they were actually talking amongst each other in the chat. How do you stimulate the peer-to-peer teaching, especially when a player has missed practice?
So this is something that came up because, as we said, some players were missing practice because they were with the first team. Some players, they were missing practice because, you know, last year we were very tough on players. Like, okay, you have a little bit of a cough, but you have to come to practice. You know, this season with COVID, not so much. As soon as somebody else is not feeling 100%, it's like, okay, stay home, like, don't worry. And so we have player missing practice, and what we will do sometimes is that when they come back in, I will take them together with some of our players and say, okay, guys, like, help Mike understand what we did in this last few days of practice. So what happened? Like, we speak about this concept, and it's also a way sometimes for them to speak alone without my help, but it's some situation with my help to be there and to say, okay, guys, remember, like, what is the priority of what we did yesterday? So again, we are over communicating our priorities with them, but it's something where I let them do most of the speaking if they are able to do it, and most of the time they are.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Francesco. So we got 2 options to go now. I know you're about to head off as well, if I'm correct. We have two options. We could either watch and listen to Coach Kyle Brown at the moment, or going into Coach Mike Mackay. I think seeing the questions that came up to my personal chat. If we start with questions from Coach Mike, we will be in this chat for a while, or in this call for a while. So most likely starting with Coach Kyle. If you mind sharing your screen and sharing your brilliant presentation and clips on your topic, and we end with Coach Mike Mackay, as we have a lot of topics that people want to discuss with Coach Mike.
All right, sounds good. I'll go quick because I know everyone's here for the guy after me. So, yeah, if there's any questions or anything after, just let me know. Can everyone see my screen? Are we good with that?
Sorry, I was muted. Yes, we can see your screen perfectly.
All right, cool. All right, this will be a little quicker anyways. Just some stuff I picked up. One of my big projects, kind of since quarantine started, was I just kind of dove into the G League stuff. I think it's a level that doesn't get a lot of attention from a lot of basketball coaches. I think it kind of gets forgotten a little bit, and I think watching it kind of affirmed what I thought going into it. And one, there's really good coaches, and I think the best part about it, and the more I've learned about it, they need to be really simple and be really creative in how they design what they do, because they don't know if they could have a guy go for 30 points, a couple games in a row. They feel like they're getting in a flow and he gets called up, or, like they could have a call, play one night, the next night come out and the NBA is sending a guy down and he's got to play 30 minutes to get a certain number of touches. So, just the way they design their stuff is really simple and creative. And I think that kind of applies to a lot of what we do at the lower levels. These are some of the teams I studied. I'm not going to go into all of them. Because again, with only 20 to 25 minutes, I didn't think it would do it justice to go into it. So I picked a couple concepts I really like from two teams, kind of three, and then I just pulled some sets at the end because everyone likes to have a new set to watch. But again, if you get a chance to watch some of these teams, there's some really, really creative, interesting things at this level. So this is kind of what I'm going to go through. If you have questions, I'll try to play it through a couple times. My video stinks. Just let me know. I paid the internet bill a couple days ago, so it shouldn't get shut off. But this is RGV. They're the Houston Rockets affiliate. They've always kind of been known to be creative. One of the things I thought they did really well was this low corner pick and roll. I've done a couple blogs on this, and it's really fun to watch. I think that side empty pick and roll is really effective. I think the more I watch it, just with the spacing it gives and the opportunities to kind of open the floor, it can really help teams. And this kind of takes it to another level. So I kind of classify anything low corner as like anything below the break, right around that break. And so for what that is it's kind of this point in the floor where the NBA court breaks, the line breaks. So one of the big things you can see right here, this is the spacing. I think it's really effective. I think it's really, really interesting because it puts a ton of pressure on the defense to kind of over exaggerate what they do. You play in the ball screen 2-on-2 defensively, but this guy's got to be at the nail, that top guy on the 3 side, and then the low man, the MIG, whatever you want to call him, has to really come over. And one of the things I've kind of learned is that it gives that point guard or that ball handler with the ball the ability to just kind of break down and see everything in front of them in an effective way, and kind of just makes passes easy. So I'll play a couple clips and we'll see it. But a big teaching point I kind of picked up from a couple really good coaches was the ball handler's really got to wait. Like he's got to wait for the screener. Like he can't go to the screen. He's got to set this up. He's got to wait, and then he attacks. He comes off, and you can see he just kind of gets downhill on this. And that guy that's at the nail, he's even in the paint even more than he probably should be, and he still can't quite get there. It just gets that guy downhill really quick, like an effective way. Second one, you see him doing a good job here with the setup. You see the spacing on the floor. You see how the nail guy isn't in position. The weak side's kind of getting into position. Now he turns the corner. The second part I really like is it really puts that hedge guy in a tough spot. If he helps up at all or really gets to the ball and that ball's not stopped by the nail defender, I mean, like it's an easy little throw to that roll guy. And so you can see him again. If you want to see a lot more clips, I have on my website, I have a ton of this stuff, and then I can always send stuff as well. But it really forces them to play a 2-on-2. And if they try to bring a third or a fourth, it's really hard to guard just any way they look at it. Here's an early help clip. So this one wasn't quite as low. This is more of a transition, kind of like a flow type play. So you can see that middle guy guarding here, guarding 11. He's in the paint early. So that trail defender is kind of buddy running. He's not really doing a good job. That guy here that's at the nail is really guarding 11. So as the ball handler comes off of it, he gets in the paint and it's a real easy pass. Again, and one of the things I think is interesting about this and where it's at is when he comes off it, all his vision is up to that weak side. And it's real easy for those guys to like pick off what guys are helping, what guys are open, and kind of going, you know, finding that advantage somewhere else off the ball. Next one. Here's another help clip. You can see, and this is kind of building on what I just talked about, kind of finding that advantage, making that next play. So they guard it. This Sioux Falls actually probably did the best job I saw of guarding it. And in this clip, that drop defender, guy guarding the screener, kind of plays it up to touch a little bit. He's right there and he's dropping back. The point guard gets that angle. He's able to attack the paint, and that big starts rolling, which makes that drop guy kind of have to suck in even more. The guy at the top here guarding the top of the key, he's not really to the ball. You know, he's got to pay attention to that guy because he's a shooter. And one of the things they did that was really effective is sometimes this guy at the top of the key offensively would be like a trailing post, but sometimes it would be a guard. And if this guy's a guard, how are you going to guard this? If this guy can really shoot it. And you'll see a clip, I think I put it in. You'll see a clip where, you know, like they just throw it back to this guy and he just chucks it from deep. And that's, I mean, just simple stuff. But he's late to help. He gets the running start into the paint. And as he gets in the paint, he reads the opposite guy there. Now they're playing off advantage and they get a foul. And if there's questions, just throw them out. I'm not that important. All right, another one, really good setup here. You see how he's got to kind of wait, be patient. Now he comes off. That on-ball defender's a step or two behind. They set a good screen, and now he's getting downhill. And now you can see that late defender at the top. This is the one I was talking about.
So, Coach, I got a question. How do you think you can prevent this from happening?
Defensively, like, I would say your easiest bet is probably switching it if you have a guy that can do that. If you don't, you really got to kind of just load up and be early and just try to keep that ball handler in that like funnel. Like once he starts getting to that elbow area, like it's really, really bad. A couple teams did ice it, and I didn't put any of the ice stuff in here just because, again, I could talk about this for an hour just because it's so interesting. So I think the best thing that I saw was switching it with that mobile big, or just really trying to like force it down and just hoping that you can kind of like rally at the point of the ball. But even that was really tough. If you want to see some of the versus the ice stuff, it's on my blog. There's a pretty good section about that.
So what do you think if number 4 would have jump switched and the original defender of the ball handler would go underneath, become the low help, and everybody rotated one up? So
yeah,
a quadruple switch.
Yeah, like I think, to be honest with you, I think that's probably the way you could, like, you would have to like kind of look at this stuff. I don't know how applicable, you know, like I know that's something over in Europe that's happening more and more. Over here, it doesn't happen a ton. So I think that would be a really creative way. Like, you know, like I think you could next it.
Next, yeah, it's almost the same. I don't see next and jump switching. It's a little bit different though, but
yeah, I mean, just the rotation behind it, but it's kind of the same concept. Yeah. But that's kind of how you would have to attack it defensively, in my opinion.
Yeah. So we got another question in the chat. Did any opponent trap on that corner pick and roll in this type of situation, or what would the guard do if he doesn't have the passing lane inside to the roller?
So there was a couple teams that got kind of aggressive with it, kind of like a trap or like a really hard hedge. What they would usually do, they're usually good at kind of sprinting out of it early if they read that, and then either throwing that little like a pocket pass or just that quick little roll pass. I don't know what you want to call it against it. They didn't have a ton of problems with it. It was kind of more if the quality of the shots and the guys they were throwing it to on the wing. What was the second part of that question?
The second part of that question is, what if he doesn't have that pass if he drives?
If he drives, usually they would either have they'd probably just play to the weak side, like find the help, kick it out, like 42 on the top here. If he comes in and this guy drives and they don't have that little pass, then he could just like kind of circle behind, Euro behind, whatever you want to call it, and then they're just kind of playing off that. The good thing is when they did it well, they were drawing those other three defenders in, so they almost a lot of times they had like those kick out passes where they could at least play off it a little. They had some second side stuff, kind of like the Australian flow, like where they'd hit that top guy. This guy would cut through to the opposite corner, and then they'd play second side ball screen. And what was really interesting about that is they would have that second side ball screen right around that break too, so it was even low. So that's kind of some of the stuff they did off of that, I would say.
Oh, perfect. Please go on, because
All right.
I think we got many more questions coming in. So you're just as important as everyone else of the speakers, Kyle. Don't worry about that.
Awesome. ELE. All right. So just kind of finishing up, you can see the spacing. You can see that early help here by 4. He tries to jump. He's not really there. 42, if you have guys that can shoot it a little bit or players, that I think that's just a big thing. Spacing and shooting is key. Here we go, another one. You can see this one. Like that's kind of, I kind of forgot I had that in there, but you can see this time they get aggressive. All right, he kind of gets more at that level and they read it and they kind of slip out. But what this clip is really showing is that they do a really good job. It puts a ton of pressure with that spacing for cutters from the weak side. And so the defense is reading this hard, like you want to call it a trap, you want to call it a hard hedge, whatever. That guy's starting to come over early. This guy's starting to sink. And it just makes a real easy read for that weak side 45 to cut. And I think that's something that I saw a lot of, and then they just play off it. The other thing that happens is sometimes that nail guy will get so like just looking at the ball, just not paying attention. That top guy can kind of cut right behind him. Here's a logo pick and roll, kind of even more to an extreme low, right at the logo on the floor. I think this is just a more extreme version of what I just showed. It puts the defense in a ton of pressure. You see this one, that drop guy has to help up a little bit. And once he does, that opens that little pocket pass right there for the rolling big. This is super effective if you have the right guys. I think it's really, really good stuff. And it just puts the defense in a ton of pressure to guard that properly.
Do you think this is one of the most underrated actions used in pick and roll?
I honestly, to be completely frank, like going into it, I saw like a clip of it and I hadn't really seen a lot. I'm like, man, that's so low. I don't know if it would work. I got to look at more of it. And the more I watched it, and one of the funny things about the G League is they steal from each other so much. And I was watching another team, and then all of a sudden, like I started watching them, and I watched another, and then there's like 3 or 4 teams doing it. And I love this action. Like it's something that if I was a head coach tomorrow, we'd have some stuff. If I had the right guys, we'd be doing it because I think it's just it puts so much pressure on the defense. Like the whole game in 2020 right now is spacing and skill. And now you're like legit moving every guy even more spaced out because of where that ball screen is. So I think I love it. Like it's really good stuff. It's really effective, and I think it'd be good for a lot of teams. This clip kind of just shows him screening towards the baseline. I don't have a ton of it in here. Again, it's on my blog. I have like 6 or 7 clips on, but you see him rolling into space. And again, it's just a weird help because what it does is it opens up that baseline where that big has to shut it down. If the low guy is the guy that's supposed to probably be at the rim and protecting, that's usually that rule on that 3 side. But if he helps in at all, then they got the hammer or the drift, whatever you want to call it. And then if he doesn't help, they got this guy running in. So it puts these 2 guys at the top in the position where they got to sink in and really help. Well, if this guy sinks in to help, it's a real easy little come behind, like type, like circle back, whatever the terminology is, for that guy to just get an easy three behind the ball. Another concept that they like, so this is a little different, kind of these early 5-man step ups in transition or flow. I thought they were really effective. Here they use like a touch screen, but it's really weird when you put that as like a 5-man or a 4-man setting that, because it's something that they're not used to doing that early in a possession. Like if you run them to the rim and then all of a sudden you're coming up with this, it gets really effective for that guy because he's always going to be behind. Same thing, that's kind of their 4 right there, setting it. Here's kind of like a pistol action. This is like a shooting 4 that set it. I said it was a pistol. I might be wrong. That's just what I called it. Struggling. See it again, just kind of gets the defense all discombobulated. Last one is the inverted pick and roll, kind of out of their delay. They run this a lot. Now you need the right personnel or just the right guys in the right spots, but they'll throw it to the 5 and then they'll just come in and set a pick and roll for them. Just something effective, gets them downhill. You don't even need to set a good screen. You just got to kind of get in the way. Here you see it again. If they switch, it kind of puts them into that like Barkley type of back down. And then if anyone that was on the call last week with Ryan Pannone, I think this is kind of what he was talking about, and I found it, where they got the switch right there. So now they got the matchup that they want. Now they boomerang, and as we learned last week, that's probably not the best way to do it right there, where he's got to get more downhill on the catch. But as they get that right here, you see what they try to do, and they don't execute it perfectly. They try to like slip this to kind of like get them all messed up. And the defense does guard it pretty well there, but that's kind of that concept that he talked about last week. All right, Capital City Go-Go. Not only is their name fun to say, but they did a really good job in this game, like kind of attacking hard. Like the Windy City Bulls were the best pick and roll defense in the G League. And what they did was they had a great game plan, just had a really good attack to kind of go against the aggressive, putting 2 on the ball, like really getting after it. So one of the things they did is those little slip outs, whatever your terminology, ghost cuts, veer cuts, slip outs. They just kind of get that guy downhill. The next one is kind of that messy pass. They really do a good job, that pass ahead against the hard coverage. So they bait them into the show. They want them to come up and really kind of show hard on the ball. And then they're just going to throw it ahead without even coming off the screen and then just roll that guy hard. They were really good at this. They got this like 3 times. Bait that help. Same concept here. They run a little action. They bait it, they throw it, and then they get the little advantage. Again, just really creative, really simple stuff. I thought they're like all the stuff that I watched that they did was really good, but I thought the way they attacked this hard hedge was really impressive. Here's creating like a kind of like what the Jazz run with that double high on the side, creating a single tag situation, but they slip out that second screener and it turns into a single tag, like kind of run at the rim type thing. Same concept. A double screen, slip out the second one, and they were killing it with that. Screen twice. This is kind of that punish or prevent. This is more of a, we're going to prevent that second hedge. So you see right here, he screens hard. Now he's going to come set a second one that hedges softer, and they attack, and they eventually get a good shot right there. So again, kind of that efficient sauce, like terminology, punish it or prevent the show. And this is definitely a prevent. They set that first one, they weaken the second one right there, and they kind of get the defense scrambling. This is like a 2-hit combo, same kind of deal. Involve them in where he's got to help on that first screen. Now they get him behind the play, and now he's attacking going downhill. We'll just skip that one. A concept a lot of teams ran was the second or third angle. I always said it was a second side screen, but I got someone in my comments on my blog post when I wrote about it said it was more of a third side. So if that person's watching, that's why I called it this. But they get the ball moving. This is like the old Hoiberg stuff, flip and pitch. They get the ball moving, and then they're attacking off that thing. An easy way to get some ball movement, some flow, and get that defense moving into a ball screen in a good spot. They build in a little pin action there. This is one of the concepts that a lot of teams used in the G League. I think there was at least 3 or 4 teams that I watched that did it. Here, a little handoff, another handoff, back to that third side, and they work in a pin. They were just really creative with that stuff in special situations. So here's Santa Cruz. They were the best ball screen team in the G League. They actually used the low corner stuff too. You see they get the ball moved, they get it up, and then they're getting downhill. Same concept. This time the screen just comes from a little different angle. You can see 6 right there coming in from the wing. And those guards were so good getting to the rim. So that's kind of all the stuff I had for that. Is there any questions on that stuff? I just got like 7, 8 sets I can show kind of quick if I have time.
I would say go for it, man.
Okay. I'm doing such a good job. I don't need to explain anymore. I like that. So here's Erie Bayhawks. This is their side out stuff was sick. I mean, we all know how good of a sharer and just kind of like a master teacher he is, but their side out stuff was really good. They got this twice last year that I saw, and it's basically just a double curl, but they're throwing that second one for a lob. I mean, they got that a lot. I think they're really effective. Another one they got was this hammer act, or I'm sorry, this is the lob. So what I like about this is the simplicity. Like if you think about like as a coach, you're in the flow of the game. You have it where, you're just running, maybe you run this alignment all the time and it's kind of just, fluff to get the ball in. Well, it's super easy to get this kind of counter type look. And what I think is really effective is this guy's going to set up like he's coming off this UCLA screen. So what the defense does is the defense is going to jump to it and kind of cheat it. Well, while that's happening and while he's making probably the right decision, the weak side is completely cleared out and he doesn't know that. So they're able to throw it for a quick one. Like this might be like a good like sleeper play if you just want to try to get a quick one, get into something and run a set after a timeout. So you see he just sets him up and then he just has that whole weak side kind of in the weak, to go to the rim. This is kind of a cool one. Diamond, and they're going to get to it hammer action for a shooter. So their bigs are really good shooters. They run a little action, kind of a surprise screen, and they get a corner shot there. Again, the creativity, like if you want good stuff, some of those coaches at that level, I mean, the Salt Lake City Stars coach is now the coach in the EuroLeague. I can't remember the team, but Schiller, and his stuff was awesome too. Here's a set from Erie Bayhawks. This is just that post curl. I think the Heat used to run it. It's actually defended pretty well. But you see that post player is just coming down. He's selling this post up. And what they're trying to get is this guy coming off the curl for a layup. This guy reads it. Like he probably needs to be up quicker just to try to get that guy to come up a little bit more. Or else they would have got a layup off this. Here's Santa Cruz. They were really good at getting single tag situations. So here's just a little like zipper cut into it. And then if you have guys that can do that, you'll probably be really good with that stuff. So here's another one. What they do a good job of is just kind of getting just a little bit of like, I don't know, just traffic, I guess is the best way. And then when they pop that guy out, then he's able to just catch and attack. But here they just have, it's the same thing. It's a single tag situation and they're able to just throw it up. This was a really creative one of my last ones here. So it's like a triple pick and roll. Wow, I am struggling today, guys. I'm not going to stop it. So you see right there, they just run that triple high and then they slip out of it and they're able to get to the rim. Main red claws are really good off screens. So this is another simple sideline out. You can see it just kind of starts as fluff, which I think kind of lulls that defender. And then all of a sudden he's coming off, and the screener does a good job setting that angle. You can see at the end here, that angle is kind of what makes it, because he knocks that guy from being able to get to that shooter. Another off-screen one. Baseline, they screen him into it. Now he's going to come off and twist. And now they're getting that guy to the corner. That was a Purdue play from when they were in the Elite Eight a couple years ago with Carson Edwards, actually. Long Island Nets, logo pick and roll, but this time it's for a big. They don't get a great look, but they get the switch. And now they're attacking, kind of playing off it. And then they eventually get back to him. Delaware, I like this set. It's really creative. Iverson into a zipper, into pick and roll, and that's their best player. So that's all my stuff right there. If you need to get a hold of me, I'm always available to talk. I don't have my cell there, but my email, my Twitter. I have a website called inthegaps.com. It has a lot of breakdowns. A lot of the stuff you saw is on there. And then every Friday I send out a newsletter. It's 5 Play Friday. It has 5 plays, just stuff I've watched and filmed that week, 4 articles, and like 3 blogs, or I'm sorry, 3 podcasts, 2 quotes, and then some kind of video. But yeah, if anyone ever wants to, I'm always free to talk basketball.
That's great. Thank you, Kyle, and especially that newsletter. It's great. It's awesome content you're sharing, and thank you very much for sharing that on Friday. I think for you it's morning when you're sharing it. For me, it's in the afternoon post, so I can watch it while eating my lunch, or I can read it while eating my lunch. So building onto that, we're going to Coach Mike Mackay. Mike Mackay is actually a 2-part series today, a 2-part topic. First one is actually going from youth to pro, and after that, me as well as Francesco are teaming up to fire away questions to Coach Mike. And I have lots of questions in the chat, and I have some questions that I wanted to ask and Francesco wanted to ask. So, Coach, the screen is all yours.
Thank you, Mike, and thanks for setting this up. I'm not going to talk a lot about going youth to pro. I'd rather it be mostly questions and answers. The only thing I'm going to talk about is no matter what context you go from to another context, there is going to be change. And all I found is with players is the greater the amount of change in from one context to another, the more difficult it is going to be for them. And we have to think of change not just in the basketball, but it's in the social emotional, it's in the daily training environment, it's in the life skill, it's all those things. So no matter what context you were originally in, the more that it's going to be similar to the next context, the less stress there's going to be. Now, when I get to that context, I can focus on those things that I need to do to be successful in that context. But if there's too many of them, it's not going to happen. And I think as Francesco was talking about, the more that we can prepare our athletes at the younger to be able to go into any type of system and also any type of learning environment with less stress, the more likely they are going to be able to adapt to that system. I've always used to say here, like for university coaches recruiting, they would see a talent at a small school, but that small school, the athlete only practiced maybe 1 time a week. And they played at a very low level. Well, now they're expecting that athlete to go into a situation where they're practicing 5 times a week, doing strength and conditioning, having team film sessions, and they're traveling to play. That's a lot of change for that athlete. And you cannot expect them all at once to be able to make that change. So I think it's about helping athletes understand what those sorts of things are. That was all I really want to talk about on that one, unless there are some more questions around that.
No, so I'm going more into the player development part as to, and most likely you will refer to that as well as make sure our players are less stressed when they go to the next level. But what would be the most underrated or undertrained skill you see nowadays with youth going to pro or going to that higher level?
I'm going to really throw you a curveball. I'll use a baseball analogy, or a slider, or a spitball. I think that we've got to understand how people learn. And I'm going to go geeky on you just for a second, but there's a difference between what's called cognition and metacognition. Cognition is about thinking, but metacognition is about thinking about how you think. And I think what we have to do with players, and Francesco he did a really good job on this, is how do we help players think about their thinking? And I think one of the biggest limiting factors is a lot of us coaches, we do all the thinking for the players. So we have all these wonderful plays and all these solutions to problems and all these wonderful things, and we try to solve all the thinking problems for them. And then all of a sudden they get to a point where they have to be the problem solvers, and they haven't learned how to solve problems. And then again, there's stress, there's a lot of problems. So to me, it starts with intent or purpose. So if I'm running one of Francesco's drills, what is the intent of this drill? It doesn't help if I'm the only person who knows that. It's important that the players know the intent. What are we trying to get better at? The second thing is we have to help, they have to be involved in the planning. I have to give them a little opportunity to talk about, okay, if it's about making a good decision on the catch, okay, like you got to do this, and let them do some planning in the drill. Then you have to help them in the monitoring of the drill. Stop them and say, hey, how are we doing on our intent? And let them be self-aware and self-analyze in the drill itself. And then at the end, they have to be able to debrief and how did we do? Now, somebody's going to jump and say, Mike, but that doesn't happen in the game. That doesn't transfer and get retained. They're all this stopping and I go, yeah, I get that. But learning doesn't happen fast all the time. Deep cognitive learning happens slow. And we have to give some time in our training some of that opportunity for them to really get to understand things. And look, I would challenge that as coaches and as players. I've done a lot of online Zoom coaching courses over the COVID and a ton of player courses. I will challenge that they're better at their understanding how they think than if we had done it on court. And the reason is it takes away the habits that they have on court. On court, they can just bluff and be active. And as a coach, they're intense, they're going hard. Oh, yeah. We all get excited about that. But I have no idea how they're learning. But when I do it online and I ask good questions and I give them clear directions, and same with coaches, they have to think about how they're thinking. And I know the work that we've been doing with our age group national teams, they are so further ahead on their cognition because we've had to teach slow and we are asking them questions about how are you thinking about this? And I just think as coaches, you have to recognize certain things in your practice. You have to emphasize how are they learning and not get hung up on, it's got to be game speed. It's got to transfer and retain, and just like the game. Because I guarantee you they're not learning it. They're just doing it fast the way you want it to look. And I would say that to me is one of the most important things in our coaching is how do people learn? That was a long answer, but.
No, but it's a great answer. And still I find myself being like, it's fascinating to watch you and hear you tell this and rethinking your own thoughts on how you are on court as a coach and what do you do as a coach. And then you think, okay, but I'm hearing you and I'm doing this and I'm doing that as well. And still having the thought, oh, but I could have done better at that point of thinking, let them think about what they are doing. So we ask our players like,
you're doing that, Mike, as a coach, and that's awesome. You're reflecting as a coach, but are you giving the players the tools how to reflect? Are you asking them to reflect on their learning? It's you got to do it and they've got to do it. And again, I find as coaches, we get too caught up in it. And look, and when I say this, I learned from me. I make all these mistakes. Is we get too caught up in one idea of the game. So it's like everything's got to be game-like. That's a big thing right now, you know. And then in the past, I mean, I go back a long way. I go back to the old motion offense where it had to be all this decision making and everybody just made all these. Well, you could never get 5 players to make all the same decisions at the same time. It just didn't work. So to me, going back to what we were talking about, Francesco was talking about, I talk about offense and defense really as it's structured creativity with limitations. They have to have some structure. They have to have all 5 players connecting on a concept that we are going to use in this possession. There has to be, I can't have one guy thinking it's horns and one guy thinking it's floppy and one guy's thinking it's a logo pick and roll. We better be communicating. Now, the key becomes the creativity is how are they going to solve the problem that the defense presents? And how much flexibility do I give them in what they can use to create to solve the problem? And that's where the limitations comes in. And that goes to Francesco's idea of my identity. Who am I? Who are my teammates? I may have more limitations put on me than what Francesco has because he has a little bit better ability. And I think that's how you help players grow, by putting in some limitations for them into their decision making and then grow it as they go.
No,
I'm open for questions.
Yeah, that's great. If I'm correct, Francesco is on for the next one.
Yes, coach. I have a question. By the way, I bring you like Renato Pasquale want to say hi. I was with him today in the gym, and as you know, he was looking at my drills and say, "No, this is too complicated. No, you should go back." As you know, he's never happy about anything. But
he's a great mentor. He taught me a lot.
Yeah, and no, but the real question is, so I think that right now the players that we're coaching right now will, let's say that they are 15 right now, they will play basketball in 10 years, 20 years at their peaks. So sometimes I wonder to myself, also like drills of thinking, so how will basketball change in the next 10 years? It changed so much in the past 10 years. So since you have more experience than me, I want to ask you, so what is an ability that you think maybe right now is crucial and wasn't so important 20 years ago? And what do you think is going to be even more important in the future that maybe right now is obviously important, but not so crucial for the players?
Again, I may not give you the answer you want, but the number one thing I think that for players who want to play a long pro career is they have to be taking care of their body now. And I would say we have too many young athletes who are not doing fundamental movement skills or prehab and not doing the strength and conditioning. And we see too many young athletes breaking down way too early because we get them to play fast and we get them to play 1,000 games in North America and the body breaks down. And we have to have them build their body. And what I'm trying to tell parents right now, especially players, is said, look, you're actually getting a free pass right now that you're going to take this year where you're not playing. And as long as you do your strength and conditioning, you do your fundamental movement skills, and you're working on your individual skills, you get to add that year on at the end of your career when hopefully you're going to be making a lot of the money. You're not making any money right now. But if you do the right things now, you get to add the money on at the end because you'll have an extra year because your body hasn't broken down. We're just seeing way too many young players broken down. You just look at the NBA, some of the top draft picks and what's happened to them, the injuries. Okay. Now, having said that, on the skill side, there's no question shooting the ball from deep. You need to have that ability eventually to shoot the ball from deep. All this stuff we talk about spacing and advantage, disadvantage. If you put a player on the floor who can't shoot, all that stuff goes out the window because they don't guard them. And you just won't be able to play on a team if you can't shoot. They just won't play. The next one is, can you make your decisions at speed? You got to be able to make decisions at speed. And the more we can help athletes understand what those decisions need to be, and I think you're doing the right thing there on how to put that in, they'll be able to play in any system. And then the other one is you got to be able to defend a position. We can't always be helping you. Like if you're getting ripped all the time and we're into rotation because you can't defend a position, we're in trouble.
I will go with another like short question. And I remember like you sent me on Twitter like a breakdown of a movement of a specific player. It was like, I think, turning his knee in a way that was not healthy. And so I want to know how you mix together like the big pattern and also like the idea of letting player coach themselves and self-organize with that amount of details about the motion part of the game, of the aspect of a skill, but also like of a motion pattern. So how you mix this stuff together in your correction strategy, let's say?
Well, to me, it's you've heard me use this line a lot, but you're hiding the veggies in the spaghetti sauce. So you're doing some things where they don't know what you're doing, but to me, warm up. And I see Seth's on the line here, but Seth calls it learning up. I think it's a good idea because when we say warm up, a lot of times coaches and players check out. To me, you learn so much from the warm up or the learn up where you're actually paying attention to details. So we're going to be really doing some things in there where we're going to be checking movement patterns. What are the limitations of this athlete? How effectively are they moving? And then to me, you build your IPP or your individual performance plan from those observations. So now I've got to be able to take that athlete and really help them enhance their strengths or their anchors, we call it, or develop their limitations. But I'm not putting everybody through the exact same thing because not everybody's at the same place. So if I have a player, let's say, who has trouble on their pivoting, very dangerous, they're twisting the knee. Well, we're gonna spend some time with them in a isolated place where they can really slow down and understand it and give them part of their prehab to work on. That's part of their individual prehab or pre-practice thing that they have to work on. Okay, but it's not the same for everybody.
So, coach, just breaking in on that one because that's exactly what a question came up in the chat. Do you think this type of work, like physical prerequisites and cognitive learning, can start from mini basket age as well?
Oh yeah. You're doing a little drill with little kids. You just tell them, what's the purpose of this drill? What do you think we're doing this drill for? Oh, we're playing 2-on-1. It's to find the open player. Okay, let's play. Why do you think we want to find the open player? Because they're open to shoot? Excellent, good answer. That's why we want to find the open player. Play. Then we talk, are we finding the open player? How are we doing on finding the open player right now? On a scale of 1 to 10, how good are we at finding the open player right now? Oh, we're about a 3. Well, what can we do better to find the open player? Little kids can handle that. Little kids, they blow that stuff out of the water. You just have to ask them the right questions. Instead of me saying, you had to pass that ball. Pass that ball. No, let them understand why they had to pass that ball.
Yeah, and building on that with this situation going on, for example, we got lots of different situations in the world right now with COVID. For example, I see one of my guys here, under 16 guys in here as well. So one of the ways I let them think about what they're thinking about in doing in the game, I let them analyze in groups previous games of us and predetermine and make notes on it and send information back to me in our team Zoom call. And they were leading the Zoom call on the quarter they were looking at. So one of the things I noticed was that they were looking at the reaction instead of the action. So to give that in perspective, they were saying, okay, the big needs to smash the screen. He needs to like smash the screen because he didn't smash the screen at minute 10:50. Okay, we're gonna look at that. And we see that it wasn't the big's mistake, but the point guard mistakes of going too early. So they were rethinking about themselves. So that was an idea I spoke about with Paul. He's also on this on this chat. So what do you think? Is that something useful to do in this COVID period in which we are in a current lockdown? Nobody can enter a gym for at least till 2021. Or do you have other great ideas for coaches that cannot enter the court to keep up with cognitive training with players via Zoom or any other stuff?
Well, first thing I'll tell you, I had two calls yesterday. One was with an individual player, and one was with our whole age group national team. And both, it's the same thing. First of all, you need to have a language, and that's a knowledge-based thing. The more you give them a language and that they can use to describe what they see. And I would challenge that a lot of times as coaches, we just assume that the players know the language. So you talk about all these words that we've heard tonight. So last night we were talking about a get, and right away one of the girls said, "Coach, I don't know what a get is." Well, that was a good point by her that she didn't know what it was. So now we explained so everybody knew, instead of assuming that everybody knew. Okay. So then what we start to do is once they have that language, now we can start to check for understanding. And then the next thing is I use PVAD, positioning, vision, anticipation. So now we would start, and that's the structure part of it. So we start with the athletes. Okay, here's the situation. We've just come down the floor. We've got the ball in the right-hand swing. We got a dead corner three. We got a trail. We got a player in the dunker spot. Draw that. And then we just tell them, okay, 5 is going to cut to get a get. On your little diagram, where's that going to happen? Tell me the exact positioning. And then you start asking why. Why do we want her to catch it at the top and not in the elbow? It's the why questions that you have to ask them. I don't know. Well, think. Give me an answer. Like throw something out there, and then you can start to get to understand how they're thinking, right? But ask instead of time. Well, she just cuts here. Did everybody understand? Like they don't understand because you're not checking for understanding. So now you're starting to get them. Then you start to talk about the vision. Okay, so you're the guard. What are you seeing? What's the cues for you when you start to go to get the handoff? Okay, the 5, you're the forward. What's the cues that you're going to see? Okay, people off the ball. You're in the dead corners. What are you watching for? What are your cues? Well, why do you have to do that? Why do you need to be where you are? So those kind of questions. And you can take one clip and probably spend 15 minutes on it. It's slow. It's slow. It's not getting through 25 clips. Just get through one clip with that depth. And I'll tell you, they will blow you away if you let them answer, but you have to give them a language that they can use.
Yeah.
To talk.
That's a great answer. I got one coming from Coach Jack Fleming from what are your thoughts on the value of freezing a decision in the moment at practice, replaying it, taking it through the possibilities? Is it also part of that slow learning metacognition?
Oh, freeze is an excellent way to do it, but as long as we're letting them rewind and fix it and not me always fixing the solution. If that's freeze, you should have been here, you should have been here. Does everybody understand? Okay, play. Because they're just going to wait for you to treat them like a little robot and play. It's more freeze. Mike, solve this problem right now. Francesco, do you agree with what Mike just said? Do you agree, Bill, or challenge that? Right? Jack, how would you position that player? Like, ask them. And that is slow. Now, the problem is, can I do that on every single action or no. But there's a certain part in practice when it's the most important thing I want to learn, I'm going to do that. But then later on, I got to let them play and I shut up. Right? But they still know in that section we're playing, what's our intent of this drill? So that's where we talk about the TLC. In a teaching drill, stop it and teach and slow it down. A learning drill, coach on the fly, and a compete drill, it's just like the game. And you got to know that there's got to be a balance. I always call it Goldilocks, too much, too little, just right. What's the balance between those types of drills? My problem is I tend to do too much of the teaching drills. That's just my nature. And I just have to remember, I had our former national team coach luckily come and work with me one time. He said, Mike, you talk too much, as you can tell. He says, you're trying to teach everything. He said, you got to let them just play through their mistakes sometimes. And that was one of the best pieces of advice I ever got.
May I ask, how did you feel about that moment you saw mistakes and you wanted to correct them, but you remind yourself about what he just said, let him play to the mistakes.
Well,
How did
it,
you
it,
process that part? Because I think that's an integral part in becoming a better coach as well.
yeah,
But how
but
did you did it?
I know that that's going to happen in the game, and I got to see how do they fix mistakes on the fly? How do they as a team solve problems? And now is giving me another bit of information about how I have to practice that with them, because that's going to happen in the game, that I can't solve it all the time. I also put the ownership on them. And it's where they have to start to take ownership or accountability for each other. So I was taught, do they have remind, encourage, praise, and breakdown conversations with each other? It can't always be me. Okay. I think Mark Bennett, he calls it his rule of three. I call it, it's me, we, and then, or sorry, it's you got to solve it first yourself. Then we, the team's got to solve. And then if I have to step in and coach, it's too late. You guys should have figured that and solved that first. So it's Mark Bennett's rule of three, but we already have a different rule of three. So I'd call it something else.
I think that's a great answer. Francesco, you got another question before we ask Coach Roberto's question in the chat?
No, I was curious about, and in part you coach already answered it, but if we're speaking about a professional team, so you're speaking about a very heterogeneous group, you have some like 35-year-old player, veteran that maybe they don't know everything, but like they don't want to be stopped 10 times in 10 minutes, while you have some very young players, 18-year-old, 20-year-old, and so they really need different stuff. And so the balance is not just when do I stop or when do I not stop, but like the best balance in the team. And obviously there's no right answer, but I would like to know like your thought process in this situation.
This is where when you go pro, there's a huge difference too. Like, let's say I'm a foreign pro player, which I deal with a lot. I'll be honest, they're not worrying about developing you. We brought you in to do two things. You got to score the ball and you got to rebound. And if you don't do those stats, we're shipping you out. We're getting another foreign player, right? That's the case for most of all of our Canadian players when they go over. They're not getting a chance to develop. They're not paying them to develop. They're bringing in the young kid from the local club, right? That's who they may be playing to develop. So it's a little different for who it is, because you're paid to come in and perform, right? And it's not the same in all clubs at the pro level. Like, that's one of the biggest problems in the NBA was, how did you develop these players? Because you're not practicing enough. You're just playing. So that's why the G League, it was so important, because you could send them back and get them to do things, right? So it's a little different about the development. And that's why the type of coaching at a pro level is not going to be like this stop and the metacognition. I'll guarantee you that's not what it is, because it's about performance, right? And if a player needs to develop, they may have to find a way and be in the right program that is willing to do that for them. And I would say that that's not always the case at a pro level. And if a player really, really needs that, they're probably not going to get it. They're going to have to go to another place, develop, then go where they can perform.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Mike, if you want to go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to ask Coach Roberto's question, and after that, I'm going to round it up in about a couple of minutes. Coach, what do you think are the more important skills, qualities to be a coach, and how do you manage pressure, self-pressure, or a hard moment in your basketball life? Roberto, is the last question also about being a coach?
Well, I think it starts with your context. Like, you have to know in your context. And I always tell people the first thing you got to do is understand your purpose and your vision. Why are you coaching? It's always, again, who plus why. Who are you coaching, and why are they there, and why are you there? And usually the problems and stresses come in when your purpose and vision doesn't match up with the clubs, the parents, the administrators, the league you're in. When those things disconnect, you're going to struggle. right? Because you're just fighting against what your inner beliefs are. And if you have to be selling yourself because your purpose and vision doesn't match up with the others, you're really struggling. And yeah, you can try to change the group and change, but if you're always fighting that, it's going to be tough. So I really think you need to be able to really have a clarity of what your purpose and what your vision is. And if your purpose and vision is to win games, you're not going to be around long, because that is something you can't always control. Okay? Because you just haven't coached enough yet. If you think that you're always just going to win every game you coach in, because you can out-coach people, though that stuff will chew you up and spit you out. If it's just about winning, if it's about an outcome, I think it's more you have to be thinking about being transformational. That's just my advice. The people that I see who last a long time in this game are the transformational coaches, not the transactional coaches, who are just using players to try to get their reward. And Francesco Ronaldo always used to say, are you the type of coach that pushes the players in front of you? Or are you the coach who's in front and make the players push you out there? Which one are you? And it was his way of saying, are you a transformational or transactional coach? I always remember Ronaldo doing that. It was really good to see when he used to do that one. What type of coach are you?
I think that's a great way to end the clinic, giving everybody some food for thought and reflecting what kind of coach are you, what room of improvement do you have at whatever level you're coaching at. I want to thank all of you guys, because this was a long one, a marathon round for 2 hours. But man, I loved every second of it. To the speakers, I want to thank you all, guys, for watching. Thank you as well. Francesco, if you don't have any questions left, I'm gonna close this one off, and we're going for round 4 next week.
Yeah. Good night, everybody.
Perfect. Thank you all, and good night.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.